Next week in my Exodus lesson series, we'll look at the giving of the law on Mount Sinai. Anyways, I won't go into too much details in that, but understand that the Jews considered the law, so sacred because it was God's intimate knowledge of himself shared with them. And in that intimate knowledge of himself is how one should conduct oneself. Because again, going back to that opening chapter of Genesis, that man and woman are made in the image and likeness of God. We are like gods, so to speak, because we are made in his image and his likeness. So an intimate knowledge of himself is also an intimate knowledge of us and ourselves. So again, the law is something sacred, something that's been given from God to the Jews. Moses receives it at Mount Sinai. It was something especially for them. That's why on the Sermon on the Mount, this is Matthew chapter 5, that Jesus, after this gospel passage, will go into various interpretations of the law. Jesus wants to make clear that he's not here to disrupt or to break the law that God has given, because it would be a contradiction of himself. Instead, now he's given even more of a self-revelation, an even greater intention of the law, the purpose of the law, and a deeper understanding of the law. This is why this saying that he says is so radical, because he's claiming authority with God. He's claiming himself to be God as he reveals the intentions of the law. And again, it's not to abolish, but to complete it, to bring it to fruit. So on one end, he's trying to make sure and make absolutely clear that he has no means of breaking the law or telling others to break the law. But as he goes on to explain the law and the rest of the Sermon on the Mount, he also goes to the other end of the extreme. That the one who many of these religious leaders are doing, the one who follows the law to the T and does everything that they're supposed to, but they're lacking one thing. They're lacking charity and love of God in their heart, and also love of neighbor. The intention of the law, the meaning of the law and following the law is pointless if there is no love of God in one's heart and love of neighbor in one's heart. That's why then he moves on and says things along the lines of, "You have heard it said, you shall not kill, but I say to you, anyone who has anger in his heart over his brother," that type of, again, the interior thing is missing. The love of neighbor is missing. Same thing. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you, anyone who has lust in his heart has already committed adultery in one's heart. Again, the lack of God, love of God, the lack of love of neighbor. And we as Catholics, again, we see bishops, we see priests, we see lay people who exteriorly show everything of holiness and everything of following the precepts of the church. They do everything right. But inside, in the deep and longings of their heart, they're lacking the love of God and love of neighbor. That's where our Lord wants to go in our lives as we prepare and continue to prepare ourselves for the Paschal Mystery and for Easter. Always examining and asking ourselves to make sure that we truly devoted our love of God and love of neighbor, not just showing it in the outside, but in our deepest thoughts and our desires. May God bless you.